And welcome into the Legislative Lounge. We want to welcome you guys in here today. My name is Nathan Bigelow. I am your host, along with my co-host, Mike Bayles, over in Arizona. How you doing today, Mike?
We are doing amazing here in Arizona. I love it here. It's beautiful. It's not as cold as where you're at.
Oh, yeah, I know. It's still cold, but hopefully this week we're supposed to be warming up back again to the normals here in Texas. But, yeah, we got a lot going on over the last week, not only just at a federal level, but also here in the state of Texas. And there was a couple items that I wanted to talk about today because one of the biggest issues that a lot of people are facing with today has to do with our children. And the children are the most important things in my life. I know, Mike, you're a father as well, and you would say that was the same thing to you. Your wife and your children are the most important things to you, and their education and how, they are being presented education and the different programs that are accessible to them are also an issue that, comes to mind when it comes to it. However, a lot of schools here in the state of Texas have been applying for what short word is VOCA, or the Victims of Crime Act. It's a federal program that is supposed to allow for the protection of children in a sense that it would allow for them, the school districts and different programs within the education system, to get children out of messy situations in the home place and allow for counseling and things of that nature to take place for them, which is all good and well. But the problem is that the left has really gotten their hands on this program and has taken it to a whole different level. For example, parents need to be aware of the hidden dangers that the programs that are actually within it that are actually taking the rights and authorities away from them as parents. Within the program itself, it enables school districts to bypass parental consent, insert government authority into private family matters, and operate under the cloak of secrecy that leaves parents in the dark about their children's well-being. Now, in particular, that is happening here in the state of Texas because a lot of schools are actually starting to apply for this funding, which is going to open up a whole new avenue into Texas around what is the schools doing with our children. And the question then becomes, well, are they advocating for things that are actually necessary, or are they institutionalizing our children with information that we don't deem is acceptable to our children? For example, we're hoping to have a guest next week on our show that's going to give their story behind a situation that has to deal with VOCA, where her child was actually being given specific hormones, unbeknownst to her, for over a year from her school counselor because she was put into counseling that she wasn't aware of. So you definitely want to tune in next week. Hopefully we can have her on, if not next week, within the coming weeks, to give her perspective of how VOCA is a very rights taken away from the parents' situation. And it's one of those situations where you can't really advocate for one thing if there's loopholes to it. Now, Mike, I don't know if you've heard of VOCA or what your understanding of it is, but what's your perspective of schools having any kind of say in regards to, what the children's counseling and matters of, situations that they might be going through at home when they're taking it to this extreme?
We saw this play out during COVID as well. Schools would go behind parents' backs and, vaccinate children against the parents' will or unbeknownst to the parents. So it's no new practice that schools are subverting the, parents completely and just, exercising too much power. And this is just, another example of that tyranny, if you will. And I would be on a different level of upset. But upset doesn't begin to describe the level of emotion that I would feel as a father, especially, let's say, if my daughter was receiving hormones for a year. And not to mention the consequences of that chemically just on the body for a young girl.
Absolutely. I'm a father of two young girls myself, and it's things like this that actually have pushed me and my wife to do homeschooling. Anybody that knows me and knows our show, I've talked about it repeatedly a lot of times, which I'm about to dive into in another matter here in the state of Texas. But it's the uncertainty of knowing what these individuals are doing in the school systems with our children that make it to where we don't trust them. Because a lot of times you go to a lot of these school councils or even national councils when it comes to teachers, and there's teachers out there that'll be like, we don't understand why parents don't trust us. It's because you're doing things behind our backs, which without our knowledge and without our approval, honestly. And when it comes to the education of our children, nobody should have a say in it except for the parents. And that's 100%. Just the reality.
100%. I mean, we still see it all the time. Teachers all over say that, we don't want religion in schools. However, in that same breath, they're trying to teach, they're trying to sexualize the children, trying to teach them about the LGBTQ. Now, I don't care, what type of lifestyle you decide to live personally.
Right.
But you don't need to bring that into the classroom. There's no place for it. Your orientation has no benefit in a classroom.
Absolutely. I mean, when it comes to the whole religious aspect of things, like I know everybody has, we have freedom of religion here, but a lot of times people are not advocating for it in schools. If somebody has a Bible club or an Islam club or, whatever club, that doesn't mean that the school is promoting it. That they have the right to create these groups and these the programs that are student led, or even if it was teacher led, it has nothing to do direct connection to the school itself. So that's the freedom under the First Amendment. And a lot of times they like to overstep that, but at the same time, they don't care if they're giving your children hormones or counseling outside of your purview. And God only knows what they're instructing our children through because we don't know about it. And that's a huge issue.
100%. I mean, there's already Supreme Court, SCOTUS presidents, Supreme Court of the United States presidents regarding student-led religious activities. As long as they're student-led, then they are within, the guidelines properly. But as far as teacher-led, there's some nuance to it.
Right.
Yeah, 100%. The subversion as far as medical and whatnot, that is completely wild to me, especially since children they are a liberty interest of us, the parents, which is why we take so much responsibility for any type of wrongdoings that our children commit.
Absolutely. And we're not going to go too much into it because hopefully we can have a show that's a little bit more dedicated to it and we can actually hear from the parents themselves that have dealt with these situations that we're talking about. But another matter here in the state of Texas that's really taken by storm is the Texas House Bill 3, I believe is what it is, when it comes to the public schools and private schools in regards to school of choice. Now, a lot of people have issues with this that are, it's really a bill that's really split down the middle. And honestly, it's split down the middle even within the Republican Party itself. Now, on the Capitol Hill, it doesn't seem that likely, but in the everyday person, me and a lot of the families that I know, there's a lot of divisiveness around this bill because there's a lot of people might say, oh, there's nothing ambiguous about it, but there really is. And we can dive a little bit into it. So under HB 3 is what it is. Most participating students would receive an amount of about 85% of what public schools get from each student through state and local funding. So what it does, this bill would set up what they call a education savings plan, where parents are allowed to pull from the funding, I guess you could say. They could apply and pull from it to help pay for private schooling, and in some situations, it would allow for even homeschoolers to apply for the funding to help with homeschooling. But there's quite a bit of issue that a lot of people are having with it, not only just in the private or in the public sector, but also in homeschooling, because there's a lot of nuances to the bill itself that doesn't directly address the issue of applying for government funding and whether or not regulations can be implemented. Now, a lot of people have conversations about, the public funding because, a lot of parents will use this to get their children into private school, which would underfund or take funding away from the public schools, which has been a major issue across the country. And regardless of whether or not you're Republican or Democrat, I mean, that's just the reality of it, because there are going to be parents out there that are going to use this funding to get their children into private school. I don't see there's anything wrong with that. However, we also have to address the fact that public schools are already underfunded. Like, that's not a political left or right. I know a lot of people are like, well, that's a Democrat talking point. Well, in reality, it is a truth, though. We have a lot of problems, a lot of problems is that there are schools that are underfunded. That's just the reality of it. And it limits the scope of what teachers can and cannot do in those particular areas. I mean, I've talked to public school teachers that are using their own paycheck to get supplies and things in their classroom. And honestly, I just think that's wrong, especially here in the state of Texas, with how much we pay in property tax, which is the top contributor to public school funding. And yet we still have schools all over the place that are not receiving the proper funding. So there's a lot of people will talk about the bill and how it's geared not to take that funding away, but honestly, it does. In all reality, that it's an issue that you have to address unless you're receiving funding in a different manner or increasing the funding to per student in public schooling. It's ultimately going to take. So I hope that it's going to be addressed by Republicans on the Capitol here in the state of Texas. That, are you going to advocate or include into the bill extra funding for public schools, because it will take funding away from those schools as parents move children into private schooling, which I personally believe that the choice of where you do schooling or how you get your schooling is in the hands of the parents themselves. So I have no problem with parents taking their children and putting them in private school with this funding. But again, you need to make a way that the schools aren't going to be even more underfunded, because there's a lot of parents here in the state of Texas, I mean, especially in the Houston area, that can't afford private school, even with the money that's going to be allotted through that the education savings plan. And one of the bigger issues from my side of things, and talking with a lot of parents that I deal with, is in homeschooling. So the program allows for the school homeschoolers to apply to receive, I believe, up to $2,000 to pay for school items and things of that nature at home. But the problem is there's no language in the bill itself that talks about when applying to government funding, right? You typically have to adhere to certain regulations and stipulations at that level. However, one of the pinnacle things about Texas is the freedom that homeschoolers have here in the state of Texas. Now, even homeschoolers pay taxes, even though they're not getting the kickback right now for the taxes that they're paying, because a lot of it goes to public and private schools. You don't really have an avenue for them to apply. There are some things out there. Now, this would create an avenue for homeschoolers to actually get money that they paid into, and honestly, I believe that wholeheartedly they should, because first of all, that's their tax dollars. But the problem is if they apply to this, are they going to be subject to overregulation from the state? And that's where a lot of homeschoolers have problems with. The bill doesn't directly, from what I've read, because I have read through it, I'm not seeing anywhere in the bill that specifically outlines, they're not going to be subject to any kind of regularization or any kind of stipulations to receive the funding. And that's a huge issue, because here in the state of Texas, we know we're dealing with a lot of rhinos in the state legislature, and they do a lot of dealings with the Democrats. So who's to say that down the road, if somebody gets into power and want to overregulate and say, hey, these people are receiving this funding, so we should have some say in what's going on with that money. Like, no, that's the problem. People can say, well, it doesn't specifically say they can do that. That's the problem. That's the problem with the bill.
Yeah, it's interesting that we have so many schools that are quote unquote like underfunded, when the Department of Education receives almost $100 billion every year. And if you divide that up between 130,000 different schools, that means each school should roughly get $500,000 of federal funding. right? So it's really on us to hold our governors accountable and get an itemized allocation of how that funding is, going. Is it going to the schools that most need it, or is it going to the schools that are performing well based on a standardized testing system?
Right. And I understand we might have a little bit of, this is the thing between me and Mike. We don't always agree on everything, even though we're best friends and we run a show together. I do understand your aspect of understanding, funding going towards the best schools, but at the same time, there's schools that absolutely need that funding that aren't receiving it. And we sit here and we complain about, children that aren't reading better, or their math and arithmetic and all of that is down. It's like, can we talk about possibly there being an issue with underfunding with public schools that might contribute to that factor? I would say yes. So, I understand. Me personally, I believe that parents should have full say and full hold on where a child gets their education and the curriculum they're in. But at the same time, I'm not oblivious to thinking that, if given the opportunity for some parents to take their children out of public schooling and put them in a private or even homeschool, in my case, that's not going to harm the public school system, because that's how they get their funding, is in head count. Now, at the same time, there's a lot of caveats to that, because the public school system at times misallocates and doesn't use it properly. So there's a conversation around it, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I could see this basically snowballing into a variety of different issues or potential issues.
Right.
You could see it as a investor dictating how the investment is being utilized. And then I hope, before this is implemented, that the IRS and the federal income tax is already done away with. That way you wouldn't have to potentially take into account anything that you applied for or, spent on regarding this program into your personal taxes.
Right. Now, me personally, I consider myself a conservative. I do typically vote Republican in almost every case, actually, all cases. But this, as the bill stands right now, even though it is written and fully supported by basically every Republican, I don't support it as it stands. I do not support it. And I know a lot of the homeschool families that I speak with, all of them are conservative as well, and they do not advocate for this bill because it allows for loopholes to be said. That's the one thing when it comes to rhinos and when it comes to the left. If they get their hands on something, they'll say, well, the wording is ambiguous and it doesn't say that we can't do this. That's the problem. I want something that is more comprehensive. I want something that is going to, specifically list out the issues. And I know that there are homeschool groups that have went and protested this and tried to advocate for these changes, and it's almost as if nobody's listening to them. Now, I might be wrong. I don't know of every single member in the House and Senate here in the state of Texas, and I haven't heard every single thing, but I'm welcome for any one of them to come and onto the show and talk to us and elaborate where and where not and go through the bill with us, because that's what me and Mike do. So if you're part of the Texas Senate or House and would love to have that conversation, we open it up to you guys, because honestly, I want a better understanding of it, because what I'm reading, I'm seeing that there's ambiguousness to the bill that allows for avenues of overregulation of a lot of different areas, but more specifically addresses my concerns as a homeschool parent. Because if I'm going to apply for money, which is my money anyways, let's get that straight. I pay the taxes. That money is mine. If I'm applying to it, all I'm getting back is my money, right? So I don't need you to tell me what I can and cannot do with that money, because it's mine anyways. So again, I open it up to anybody out there that's listening and wants to come onto the show and that's on the state or House side and kind of explain it to us, because I can promise you, after just listening to this, there's going to be hundreds of people, if not thousands of people, that want to hear the same thing that I want to hear, is how are we going to address the issues that are, people are bringing up about this bill.
Yeah, close up any loopholes and reduce the ambiguity.
Absolutely. But
there's a lot of crazy stuff if we go a little national real quick. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on. Now, but out of Arizona, there's a bit of protest going on over the Arizona ICE Act, SB 1164, and I don't understand why there's so much. Well, I do understand, because it has to do with illegal aliens being deported. But SB 1164, the Arizona ICE Act, all it does throughout its 8 pages, 6 pages that actually matter, is just mandates that Arizona law enforcement comply with federal law enforcement in regards to deportation, in regards to apprehension, and anything that goes along with that line. I mean, it's so self-explanatory. It's unreal to me why anybody would oppose it.
I mean, honestly, Mike, though, like, it's kind of a redundant bill, honestly, because you have to comply with federal immigration, because it is a federal law. Like, they are the ones that have jurisdiction over immigration. Regardless of how you feel about the federal government from a state perspective, the Constitution clearly gives the federal, when it comes to immigration, gives the executive branch the full authority over immigration. It's just how it is.
100%. It's such an easy bill to read, and so if anybody's curious, SB 1164, the Arizona ICE Act. It's pretty easy. Then we come over here, you get to a little bit more radical, and I talked to you a little bit about it yesterday, Nate.
Yeah.
So this is HB 380 out of Maryland, and it is receiving its first reading in the next chamber. And basically, this is repealing a criminal law that prohibits the sale of contraceptives and contraceptive devices by vending machines in school. So essentially, certain lawmakers in Maryland want to sell contraceptives to children in schools, and it doesn't specify what school. It doesn't say high school. It doesn't say middle school. So they want the option to essentially, what I could take away from this bill is Democrats, because it was Democrats that introduced this, want to sell condoms to your children in preschool, elementary school, middle school, high school.
So just to be clear, right now in the state of Maryland, they do already have a ban on this, right? Correct? Because
Correct.
Doesn't it have to do with banning like vending machines with these kind of things?
Yes, it's already a criminal law that prohibits it, and they want to repeal it.
This is the nonsense. I mean, this is just as bad as last week, where we talked about, Ohio and Mississippi, I believe, wanting to criminalize men for, having relations with women and ending it without the intention of procreating and criminalizing them for that. It's crazy. And this is all coming from it was presented by Democrat, correct?
What is it? SB 2319?
No, the HB 380, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, the HB 380, yeah, Democrat.
Right, and I know the other two because we talked about them last week. We're absolutely, so it's just like every week it seems like the Democrats and the left is just becoming more radicalized with their ideology, and they wonder why. Based off of all of the polling that we saw with Kamala Harris, why they just lost just out of nowhere. And it wasn't just a loss. Like, she got swept. Donald Trump won every single one of the swing states, won the popular vote, which is the first time since 2004 with George Bush, and that was just barely. And they sit here and say, well, all of the polling, I don't understand it. It's because you guys are just going completely insane.
Yeah, it's wild. Like, the synopsis of this bill is repealing the prohibition on and criminal penalty related to the sale of certain contraceptives and contraceptive devices by means of a vending machine or other automatic device at a kindergarten, nursery school, or elementary or secondary school.
I mean, think about this, parents that are listening. Would you be okay with contraceptives being in a vending machine of your third grader's school? Because I'm going to tell you right now, I've got a second and third grader that's going into third grade, and she's getting to that point where, things are changing. She's growing up and things like that. And honestly, I don't want anybody else having that conversation, because I can tell you right now, my daughter, who is very inquisitive, is an individual that would see that and be like, "What are these, Daddy?" And I'm like, I don't think you need to know that right now. And I don't think it's the place of these schools in any form or fashion to be putting those questions in the minds of our young youth of America, because it tends to get into a lot of different areas where, honestly, they just need to be kids. Kids need to be kids. Leave our children alone and stop messing with their minds about nonsensical things that have nothing to do with being a child.
100%. We've had some pretty good movement in Congress too. We've had some bills that were introduced.
Yeah.
We talked about this last time we were on the show on Monday. HR 722, basically, it implements equal protection into the 14th Amendment of the Constitution for the right to life of every human being, regardless of if they're inside the womb or outside the womb.
Yeah, because the bill specifically says preborn, does it not?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So that's a great bill. Honestly, I don't know if it'll go anywhere, because we've got some rhinos up in Congress that I don't know if they actually hold true to the lines of being a conservative and protecting and preserving life. So will it even get past the committee is the question. And that's something we'll have to see, because you really sit here and you ask yourself, the Republicans, and be like, do you really adhere to the philosophies of being a conservative and preserving life? I guess we'll find out.
Then you have another one, which I hope that'd be wonderful if this one gets HR 899, which is to terminate the Department of Education, which we know since 1979 and its inception. Before 1979, the illiteracy rate in this country was less than 4%. Now, in 2025, it is above 21%. So that means 1 out of every 5 Americans are completely illiterate. They do not possess the ability to read or write. So that comes out to like 66 million Americans that do not possess the ability to read or write. Another 65% of Americans have below an 8th grade reading comprehension level. So you're looking at probably around 80% that...
I mean, we've dived into the numbers before on our own podcast on Monday night, where we talked about how the federal government, and when it comes to the Department of Education, I believe the last time I looked, it was around $247 billion that they take in on an annual basis for that particular department. But only 6 to 8% of it is even allotted out to these schools. So the question there becomes, because that's roughly around $80 billion is given to schools, and most of it has to do with federal funding. And so there's a very limited scope of how much funding from the federal government goes to public schools at every level. But where is the other, nearly 95% of the funding? And then you sit there and you ask yourself, what's the purpose then? I mean, if we're paying all these taxes into a program where our children are getting probably only 1 to 2%, because most of that 6 to 8%, like I said, goes to like Pell Grants and things like that. Why do we have it?
Exactly. Doge is at the IRS. We need them at Department of Education now.
Absolutely. So, I mean, Doge has been really doing some big things. And honestly, we're just seeing more and more people on the left that are just going absolutely bananas over what Doge is doing. But I need to add some clarification, because it seems like people are confused on what the parameters or the authorities thereof, or lack thereof, that Doge actually has. Just to put this in perspective for everybody, Doge does not have any authority to make any changes. They are a glorified governmental audit program, is what they are. They go in, they read, literally all they do is read, and break down the data that they get. making sure that all the transactions and everything are going to where they're supposed to go, or if they're going to nonsensical things, writing it down. And then what they do is they refer that to the president and say, hey, this is what we found. And if you want, I've had a lot of people say, oh, you can't verify that there's any fraud or there's mishandling of it. There's a whole website that gives you the actual transactional history of everything that they're finding and why they're saying that is garbage. You can go to doge.gov. And people sit here and and I've had numerous of them tell me, oh, I've been to the website, there's nothing on it. It's like, clearly you haven't, because they have specific outlines of agencies, descriptions of what it is. They have uploaded information, links to different transactional reports, and the actual findings of PDF files showing where this money's coming from and where it's going. So don't sit. That's why I say, people, don't sit here and tell me you've looked at the website when you haven't, because it specifically breaks down all of this information for us so we know what's going on. But from that point, they refer it to the president. The president then convenes with members of Congress, right? Because even the president can't do anything about it unless it's through a governmental agency like USAID, because that was established by an executive order. He can abolish the program altogether like he did. Now, when it comes to Congress, it's their job to take this information and then create budgets around limiting or completely getting rid of the information here, which is going to save us the money. Like I said last week, a week and a half ago, the Republicans presented a budget resolution, which does just that based off the preliminary findings of Doge and things from the Festivus report. So we'll see more and more of that. But it ultimately comes down to what Congress is going to do. So stop saying that Doge is making these unilateral decisions or Trump's making these unilateral decisions. Everything Trump has done has been within his scope as president. I mean, because a lot of people will sit here and they're blue in the face and tell me, oh, he doesn't have the right. It's illegal for him to get rid of the USAID. And that's just not true. I mean, we've talked about it before. It was formed by an executive order. It can be removed by an executive order. It is under the executive branch.
And, according to the Leader report, President Trump's not even exactly pleased with Doge's progress so far. He wants Elon and Doge to be more aggressive.
Yeah, absolutely.
And on top of that, Eli Crane has introduced articles of impeachment against a federal judge who blocked Doge from accessing Treasury Department information.
Right.
Like, there are so many judiciary actions being held against Donald Trump, Elon Musk. I can't keep track of them all.
I mean, and there was There's 3 blockades. That was one of them that you just spoke about. Another one was there was a federal judge that blocked Doge and Trump's authority for winding down the USAID. Well, thankfully, we have another federal judge at a higher court that has actually granted the wind down to go forward, because they understand that it's directed by executive order. So Trump, again, is fully, and that came out, I believe, just yesterday.
Yeah, the wind down.
Yeah,
that was yesterday. There's so much judiciary action, and what we're seeing is, Doge only has a read-only access.
Right.
And if I remember correctly, these people are upset about Elon Musk. I'm pretty sure he's had a top secret clearance since Obama.
Yeah, I think it was even before that. I mean, he's been working with NASA for a number of years with SpaceX. So, I mean, he's given top security clearance. Like, it's not just there's different levels, right? He's got top security clearance in these areas. And a lot of people don't know that, I've had people in live debates that I've been in over the last week or so saying that Doge is an imaginary, organization. It's not real. It's like, yes, it is. It was just like USAID. It was officially recognized as an executive agency under an executive order from Donald Trump the day he was put into office. And Elon Musk is a top advisor to the president, formally recognized as an employee of the federal government. So anybody saying here, oh, you just got this random billionaire doing it, no, he's an actual federal employee now. I don't know if you know that. He's just not taking a paycheck for it, just like Trump.
Yeah, they're all, Donald Trump's got his billionaire friend. Well, why are you so upset about a billionaire? You like George Soros?
Well, even further than that, like I got a lot of these people that are supportive of Joe Biden and President Obama when back in his time. But the problem is, their Secretary of Treasury was a billionaire in of herself, in his actual cabinet, not just some advisor. She was literally the Secretary of Treasury.
Yeah, but it's like, well, why all this hate towards billionaires when you have your own billionaire supporters? I mean, Governor Pritzker out of Illinois, he's worth $3.2 billion. I don't know how you did that.
Right, because and he's one of the most vocal people against what's going on lately. It's kind of funny how that works, right? The people that tend to be benefiting from these programs like USAID and a lot of different areas, like, the biggest advocates against RFK, right? We got Bernie Sanders and I call her Pocahontas, but Elizabeth Warren sitting out here advocating against things like that. And it's like, you really got to start to take a look at the loudest people against something are usually the ones benefiting the most from it.
But it's like you have people like, I don't know if you're looking at it right now, but like Jamie Raskin, who openly called for an insurrection in early 2024 if Donald Trump was to be elected. He's now claiming that it's becoming obvious to the American people that Elon Musk and President Trump are agents of corruption. And these people are losing their minds because all of their, it's hypocritical, all of their corruption is being exposed.
Absolutely. I mean, it comes down to, it was just released, I think when it comes to Tulsi Gabbard and the DEI programs and the defense sector that she's a part of, the national intelligence community, she's eliminated the DEI program, which has already saved $20 million just right there. It's like people sit there and say, well, that's just $20 million. What could the VA do with $20 million? What could homelessness do with $20 million? These are the things that you have to sit here and think about, because it's the same people that will sit here and say, oh, these are just minuscule numbers. Look, these are also individuals that are financially illiterate, it seems like, because, like I say, when it comes to financial literacy, every penny matters. So to you, it might seem like minuscule numbers, but when you got 20 or 40 different minuscule numbers putting that, it's a pretty significant number at that point, right? And we could do things like universal health care, like you that you keep advocating for, even though I'm not totally for it myself. But I mean, those are the kind of programs you keep whining for, but yet you don't want to find the money to do them. And then when we do try to find the money, you cry about it. And it's like, how can you advocate for something that we have no money for, and then cry when we try to find money?
You know what's interesting is if you go on Doge.gov, it'll tell you the exact estimated savings, and it's at $55 billion. Now, what they were talking about in a press conference, I'll say 3 days ago, is a portion of the savings get reallocated or refunded back to the American people. It comes out to like $5,000 paychecks or something like that. Now, if you're a Democrat and you oppose this administration, I don't want you to take that check.
Absolutely.
You don't get that check because you call this agency corrupt.
Right, and they're supposed to be the ones that are advocating, according to them, they're the ones that advocate for the middle and lower class the most. Well, I'm pretty sure everybody in the middle class and lower class would love to receive a $5,000 check. I don't know about you, but, what could I do with $5,000? I mean, I got some bills. I don't know about you guys, but I got some bills. $5,000 is a significant amount of money.
No, I definitely got some bills, and it's there's some people that are saying, oh, won't that act like a stimulus check and create artificial inflation? No, because that's money already spent. You're just giving it back to the originator.
because the whole concept around it is to eliminate spending it here and give it back to you over here. It's just like, what are you guys not understanding? Like, we're eliminating these wasteful, nonsensical programs and giving you your money back because you pay taxes, right? Like, that's your money. I'll never understand that.
Now, a little bit of culture. I know we don't talk about culture a lot, but a little bit of culture. What are your thoughts on this, Nate? So there's a Broadway musical coming out. It came out, I think, a little bit around a decade ago. It's called Jesus Christ Superstar. Now, as it sits right now, there's a woman who's being cast to play Jesus Christ. Now, what's your opinion on it? It's Miss Cynthia Erivo.
Now, first off, me and Mike, we're a respecter of all religion, and we believe wholeheartedly in the First Amendment when it comes to, you believe what you want to believe, because that's your right. And we have our beliefs. I don't particularly consider myself, I guess you could say, with a traditional Christian. I do have my beliefs. But when it comes to this whole situation, you don't have to be Christian or non-Christian to have a voice on this, because this is what I don't understand. You get individuals out here that are totally against Christianity, right? They advocate against it. They just boycott it, and they even protest it in some situations. But I'll never understand a group of people that want to openly mock a religion that they think is imaginary. You call us crazy for believing in a deity that you believe isn't in existence, doesn't exist, right? It's imaginary. But you're the one protesting, you're the one mocking something you think doesn't exist. I think you're a little bit crazier than me.
100%. Like, when it comes to this, when it comes to the aspects of religion, these characters in history, I want the most accurate depiction of Jesus Christ. I want it to seem like they plucked this actor out from, Jesus Christ, was born in Bethlehem, raised in Nazareth, so I want somebody who fits that description of somebody who grew up there. I want, if we did something as far as like Islam, I want the person who may or may not play Muhammad to be an accurate depiction.
Right.
Of where Muhammad comes from.
Because I'm going to tell you right now, because I've got a lot of Islamic friends. If this was Muhammad being portrayed like this, there would be a huge issue all across America, and rightfully so, because you're openly mocking somebody's religion, and I don't think you have that right. Like, you have the right to say what you want, but like, I'm not talking about rights. I'm not talking rights in regards to like the constitutional. I just think morally, I think that you don't have the right morally to sit here and mock something you think is imaginary. Because in my mind, I'm just like, you're insane for trying to mock something you think is in non-existence.
Like, not only is this a woman who's cast to play Jesus, but she is a black woman. Jesus was not black. Jesus was, his skin tone was olive, if I remember correctly, according to even original scriptures. He's described in the book of Matthew, I think, as olive tone, right?
Yeah.
And she's also part of the LGBTQ community. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't think Jesus Christ would, support that type of lifestyle. He'd probably go out of his way to lead you from that lifestyle. There'd be so much there'd be protests in the masses if a blonde-haired, blue-eyed, porcelain white individual played Muhammad.
Yeah, I think it just has to do with the rendition and just the disrespect of in people's beliefs. That needs to be a little bit more, not monitor, but like just in the sense of everybody thinking about it. I'm not talking about there should be any involvement from the government or states or whatnot. I'm just saying from a perspective of humanity, like let people be people. Let them believe what they want to believe. I mean, I might not believe what you believe, Mike, and I know we've had differences in our beliefs, right? But like openly mocking somebody, it's just not right morally. Like if you sit here and you'll say to me that you have morals and values and things of that nature, but yet you want to mock somebody for what they believe in a spiritual sense, that's just wrong in my opinion. But
100%.
taking a look, taking a look at several different things that happened throughout the nation over the last week here. There was a lot of movement in Congress, of course, like we've been saying, but one of the bigger things this week was Kash Patel. Kash Patel was an individual that has been confirmed, but even though his vote was 51 to 49, right, I actually believe that he was probably the most controversial confirmation just because of the extent of questioning, delays. I know Pete Hegseth was a 50-50 and then split by the vice president, so you would think that he would be a little bit more controversial, but no, in all reality, his was more of a personal attack on his home life and things of that nature. So honestly, it's not controversial. I think that's just a low blow by the left, honestly, because that was the only thing that they talked about. Because in all reality, his qualifications to be the Secretary of Defense was all there. There's no question about it. Right, that's just the reality of it. I mean, he's a veteran. He's worked in that area. He's worked in the intelligence community. He's done a special operations. He's combat vet. Like when it comes to defense and security and things of that nature, I don't know of anybody better than an actual military individual. So, but when it comes to Patel, there's questions about his support and things like that. So I don't see them as a valid question. But, they kept questioning about the whole January 6th. They kept questioning about Donald Trump's statements. They kept questioning him about, things that were politics related, honestly, which made it a lot more controversial, even though I don't agree with what they attacked him on. I think they tried to attack him for his qualifications, which in all reality, he's just as qualified as anybody else that's been in the position before. I mean, he was an attorney. He's worked in the national security intelligence area. He's worked for the DOJ. You can't sit here and question a man's resume when his resume is just like a lot of other people that have been the FBI director.
100%. It's laughable when these people, when these clowns really, talk about qualifications when majority of them are not qualified to even read the Constitution. We've seen time and time again where they are constitutionally illiterate. I mean, AOC, Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, who were the
two Republicans.
The Republicans that voted against Kash Patel. It's truly upsetting when we see representatives of our voice that don't understand their own job, and they're trying to say that Mr. Patel is not qualified when his resume is probably 3 times as large as some of theirs.
Understand it. So he was a defense attorney. He was a trial attorney for the DOJ. Worked on a national security intelligence committee within the White House, within parts of Congress, not as a congressional member, but as part of it. And there's a lot of different areas. But what infuriates me the most is at this point, because he's an Indian American, right? That's his lineage. His family originates from India. They're sitting here calling him a DEI hire. And it's so funny to me. You see it all over the. I'm surprised you haven't seen it, Mike. All over social media, especially on X, and I've seen it in several different lives that I've been on TikTok, where people are sitting there calling him a DEI hire, but yet they want us to be the side that isn't racist. I guess this is the simplest way to say it, but honestly, you look at it like that, and you the way that they say it, with the demeanor that they say it. It begs the question of, who's really showing their true colors here? Because he has the qualifications. Look at his resume. For you to sit here and say that an Indian American man is taking over a white gentleman's job, it's how they're making it out to be, because Christopher Wray, it begs the question of, are you really showing your true colors here? Because why else would you be saying that?
100%. Democrats show their true colors all the time. You were in the live that I was in where our friend AIP, whenever he debates, the the opposing side, the Democrat supporter, always says, you should be wary of ICE.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
He's an American citizen. He's just got an accent because he grew up in Chile.
Yeah, and it's it you see it from the left all the time. They try to campaign themselves or be the champion of the left of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and it almost is like they don't understand what those words mean, because you're sitting here, equity and inclusion, right? Inclusion of people that have different backgrounds, but yet here you are with a man that is fully qualified to be this position because he has the same a similar resume to people that have done the job in the past. You're only calling him that because he's of Indian descent.
100%. And if we get down to the bare bones of DEI, it's honestly an outgrowth of critical race theory, which was conceived by Derek Bell, and that has its roots drawn back to critical theory out of Nazi Germany in the Frankfurt School of Thought, written by Max Wertheim, who then came over to California and taught. So you can see how that kind of infiltrated our systems and started infiltrating our colleges. And, it basically, DEI eliminates the meritocracy, introduces racial profiling, racial discrimination, and creates inequality and strives for equity, which is equality of outcome.
Right. I mean, the last couple things that we wanted to talk about today, it just has to do with the media, honestly, because there are so many things out there right now that is just absolutely nonsensical when it comes to the media, from understanding polling to blaming the president for plane crashes. It's just, what are we doing nowadays with media? Because in all reality, for the last several years, right, gas prices we've seen fluctuate, get over $4, $5, and you talk about places like California, you get $6 and $7 a gallon, but the president has no control over that. But somehow, some way, out of this presidency, as of January 20th, the president has some kind of control over the rate of plane crashes, according to the left, because they're sitting here blaming Donald Trump for the number of plane crashes, and saying that because what he did with the FFA and limiting the number of people that worked there, somehow that contributed to plane crashes.
Actually, if you look at the 2024, the amount of plane accidents and crashes that happened in 2024, January, there were more January 2024 than there were January 2025. There were more in February of 2024 by far than 2025. So is it Biden's fault for all those plane crashes as well?
It's like the hyper focus on something that happened that could have been avoided, and it was due to the incompetence of a pilot, in my opinion, that was being instructed on what to do properly. That's kind of like just triggered this hyper focus on it. It's just like, I don't know if you remember, Mike, I don't know if it was last year or 2023 when all these train derailings started to happen. All of a sudden, that was all over the news, that you heard of train derailings and chemicals and all this other stuff, and the government's trying to poison us and all this other stuff. And it's like, is this just like another one of those situations where we're seeing one event and then just hyper focusing on it for a particular reason?
That's why, I say it all the time, be aware of your surroundings. Like, pay attention to that man behind the curtain, because they might want you to hyper-focus on the train derailment or the plane crash, but pay attention to what they're doing inside Congress. What kind of legislation are they trying to get passed? Like, this whole hyper fixation on the FFA employees, the firing of 300 employees, when the government knows full well that there's 45,000 employees at the FFA.
Right. And and then also, it's the media, really. The media makes these stories just hang on for weeks and weeks and weeks. And now we're seeing the media even talking I saw an interview between a pollster and Chris Hannity just yesterday actually, where he was talking about the approval rating of the president, right, based off polling. And I was like, I don't know about you, but I've never been a part of a poll. I've never had somebody say, hey, what is your approval rating of the president and what he's doing? But funny enough, I'll get to it here in a moment, but when it comes to the polls, have we not learned that they are meaningless?
Yes.
Every single poll leading up to the 24 election showed Kamala Harris winning easily, but yet she lost in a landslide.
100%. It's wild, the continuation of this this ridiculousness.
I mean, I this is a warning to everybody listening. Stop taking stock in polls, because ask yourself, ask the person sitting next to you, have you ever actually been polled before? I'm not saying not every one of you, but I can tell you right now, we haven't been. But you know what's funny?
I've lived all over the United States. I've lived in several parts of the world. I have never, ever been polled.
You want to hear something funny, Mike? I made a video about that, right? Saying that exact thing. Guess what happened about 2 hours later? I received a phone call from Clear Solutions or something like that. They're a pollster. You're going to sit here and tell me I make a video on social media and and you're going to try and tell me that my phone devices and people aren't watching me or listening to me, when 2 hours after I make a video saying I've never been polled before, I get a pollster calling me asking if I have a approval rating for the president. And I was on the phone with them for like 20 minutes because some of their questions were absolutely inflammatory, and you could tell that they were absolutely politically biased. And I told them that right over the phone. I was just like, what are these questions? But anyways, when it comes to the whole situation, we've got a lot of things coming up next week. Hopefully we can bring in the individual to talk about VOCA and the whole their whole story behind that. But also, we've got some big news coming up, hopefully this week, when it comes to the Epstein list. I know a lot of people are looking forward to that. It's on Pam Bondi's desk right now, and one of the promises that Kash Patel put out there was day one, he's going to release the list, which is Monday. So we're going to hold him to it. Hopefully by next week, we can go through that and give you guys some updates on that. But we welcome you guys for joining us today. We thank you. And we want you guys to tune in with us on Mondays at 7 p.m. as well on YouTube, Rumble, and Facebook. But follow the Legislative Lounge on all platforms along with Radio Dabang. Mike, any closing comments?
Thank you so much for tuning in. Big thank you to Radio Dabang and Mike Kahn for giving us this opportunity and allowing us to be on this show every weekend. It means a lot to us. We love you. Stay blessed.
Absolutely. And we'll see you guys next week.